All right. So if you're like me and a Batman fan, you're kind of tired of essentially getting the same three villains over and over and over again. For the last 20 years, every single iteration of the Batman has essentially given us Two-Face, Joker, and Penguin. They always pop up in some way, shape, or form for the Batman to fight. For the most part, it kind of gets boring. I would love to see adaptations of story arcs involving other Batman villains. Batman Hush, Batman Zero Year with the Riddler. Fantastic, especially with the way in which the Batman ended. Nightfall with Bane breaking Batman's back. Uh, Introducing Scarecrow, the same type of story arc that he had in Batman Arkham Knight. Hugo Strange, where he figures out Batman's identity and tries to pull his life apart. You can even have a situation where Hugo Strange and Hush are essentially working together to see if one of Hugo's mad experiments of his genius is, can he replace Bruce Wayne with Hush? Fantastic story arc right there. But the character that I really want to see introduced is definitely Mr. Freeze. Now, for those of you who grew up watching Batman the Animated Series, there was a Mr. Freeze movie called Sub-Zero, and then he also showed up again in Batman Beyond. And I've always been fascinated with the character, but we've never gotten a live screen adaptation of him. Gotham kind of pulled the trigger and introduced his character on the show, but his character quickly went from a tragic character, kind of like a joke character, which is something that I've always held against the Gotham TV show, which is they introduce these characters and then a little, maybe a season later, the characters are essentially, their personalities completely change, where they're cracking jokes, or they're only there for like a gag and then they leave, or they do something and then they leave. They never seem as though they're major threats. Here's the thing. The Batman perfectly sets up a Mr. Freeze, basically origin movie, and it could easily set him up as the major villain for the sequel. Now, as we see at the end of the Batman, we see that the entire south side of Gotham has essentially been flooded. What if living inside of the south side of Gotham was Victor Fries? Fries? I don't remember how you say his last name before he became Freeze. I believe it's Victor Fries. What if he was living down there? What if Victor had retreated to the south side of Chicago? South side of Chicago, the south side of Gotham. They're basically the exact same thing. But he had retreated to the south side of Gotham to essentially run his illegal experimentation. And while he was running his illegal experimentation, he was experimenting on coal technology to freeze his wife in suspended animation to keep her alive. But then, Riddler blows up the dams and floods the entire southern coast of Gotham. What happens? Victor's working in his lab. He's just typing away like a madman, trying to save his wife. He's working on that experimental technology to freeze her. He finally freezes her, and then the power goes out. And when the power goes out, the water comes in. And he gets absolutely blasted by the water now flooding his building. And that experimental technology goes off. And when it goes off, it freezes him. And when he freezes, that's the last thing he remembers. He doesn't remember what happened to his wife. He's just frozen in that moment. Now, of course, they're gonna do a something along the lines of a rescue effort, and I would expect that Wayne Tech or another corporation would probably come in and see the situation, and they would save Victor Freeze's wife because they find her, but then they believe that he's dead and they move him to another facility. And while he's in transit to that other facility, he wakes up. And when he wakes up, everything goes to hell. Now, you could do two things. You could introduce the scientist aspect of Victor Freeze, where essentially he requires the cold suit to keep his body temperature below zero so that he can function. Or you can introduce the metahuman version of Mr. Freeze. I'm fine with either or. I think they're both really good options to essentially take the Batman in. Because for the most part, when we've last 20 years maybe, has Batman fought a villain that had something on the lines of a meta-human ability. There was Bane in the really bad, was that Batman and Robin or Batman Forever? I think that was Batman and Robin movie. That was basically it. You had Poison Ivy, but she never really used her plant-based abilities on Batman in a way that was super effective. Of course, that movie also introduced Mr. Freeze. Like, the joke movies were literally the only movies that had Batman go up against individuals with abilities and powers. It would be great to see Ben Affleck's Batman, Christian Bale's Batman, Robert Pattinson's Batman, a Batman that's current, go up against an individual with super abilities. I want to see it. You want to see it. They want to see it. Everyone wants to see it. We don't need to constantly have the Joker. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. The Joker is a fantastic character. But for Matt Reeves' future Batman installments, I would rather have the Joker be a character in the background that's constantly messing with Batman than have the Joker be this character in the foreground that's basically stealing the show and wresting the momentum of the movie from another villain. I'll always agree with the idea of cutting the Joker scene from the Batman, because if they had essentially introduced the Joker as the person the Batman went to kind of get a profile on Riddler, it would have really taken away from Riddler, because then what you're essentially saying is that, oh, well, the Joker can figure you out, so why can't Batman figure you out? Please give us a Mr. Freeze movie. We deserve a Mr. Freeze movie. A Mr. Freeze movie would be super fucking dope. Which is hilarious because there's a part of me that loves Mr. Freeze, not only because of Batman the Animated Series, but also because of Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze from the really, really bad Joel Schumacher movies. He is the only redeeming thing from all of those movies. Dude was having a ball. But yeah, I want to see Mr. Freeze in a future installment of the Batman. I'm really hoping Matt Reeves, I almost called him Matt Freeze, Matt Reeves decides to go in that direction in regards to the villains that he's going to introduce going forward. I'd love to see a more comic book accurate Scarecrow, where he's actually injecting people with fear toxin and he's trying to bring fear to the entirety of Gotham City. Like I said, I'd love to see a story beat of Nightfall, where essentially it's a psychological thriller, kind of the same way as the Batman, but whereas the Batman was a journey along the lines of the psyche and the emotional damage of Bruce Wayne, but also the emotionally damaged people inside of Gotham who are all kind of just living there and suffering all together. Batman Nightfall could be the physical and mental recuperation of Bruce Wayne, where he gets broken by Bane and we see his journey to basically become the Batman again, while also watching Bane absolutely make a mess of everything inside of Gotham until he gets revenge on Bane and he beats him. I'm just, man, oh man, I am tired of the Joker always being the person that they drop for a Batman movie. It's like, yes, I love the Joker, but there are a ton of other characters that I feel that we could introduce that people would love. Even the idea of the Court of Owls. I love that idea. I think it's a little bit too soon. That's probably a year 5 Batman, maybe year 10 Batman in his career who will discover and go up against the Court of Owls. I wouldn't really throw a year 3 Batman into a fight with the Court of Owls. But yeah, that's my opinion. Comment down below. Let me know. What villains would you like to see Batman go up against in the future in the Matt Reeves Batman universe? Do you want Joker? If you want Joker, comment down below. But if you want another character, let me know who that person is down below in the comment section. You know I love chatting with you guys. I'm trying to get back into production mode since this week we're going to be getting Moon Knight and a bunch of other things. And I will catch you in the next one.